Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic in this 10-minute moan is the tuition fees free in Scotland and the effect it's having on our universities, and I believe also it's having on who goes to university. Now, before I get into the story, I just want to explain. I see the free tuition fees for universities and colleges nothing more than another vanity project and bribe from SNP, because we had a process before whereby if you weren't from a rich family, you could apply for bursaries, and if your qualifications stacked up, you could get places in universities. So we've always had free tuition for universities, but it just wasn't available to those who could afford them. So the SNP introduced this thing where everybody got free university places. However, because they've not got an endless pit of money that sometimes they remember, they started putting caps into how many Scottish kids could go to these universities. Because what could happen then is the universities could fill the places up with foreign students who pay ridiculously high amounts of money and students from other parts of the United Kingdom and get money into the system. So they started putting caps on. And then they decided they wanted to sort out the attainment gap. And the attainment gap is basically the difference between perceived good postcodes and richer postcodes where the education results are different. So they tried to bring that down. So what they started doing then was, it was a postcode lottery. Because if you were in what they termed as a deprived area, or an area they wanted to attract more higher education students from, they actually brought down the parameters for qualifying for university. So it was easier for kids from deprived and not successfully educated areas to get into these places that were capped, right? So the whole thing got messed up a bit. And I was speaking to a parent a few weeks ago of a bright child who lost out in university place because of his postcode. And the person who went to the university and got the place was from a school and a postcode that wasn't so good, and they get in with lower grades. So what we're now seeing is two things. We're now seeing people going to college or university with a lower starting point, which might sound harsh, but it's reality, because of the parameters set on getting accepted in courses. And people who years ago would, had parents that would be able to fund their university fees just don't get them because of where they live. So the whole thing's a bit mucked up just now. And nobody's saying stop giving out free places at universities, but what would make more sense is just adopting the old way, where if you applied for a bursary, you could get one, as long as you did good enough grades. So we would get better suited candidates going into universities, regardless of where they came from, regardless of the financial position of their parents, and potentially generate a better quality of person at the end of those degrees, which I believe is also debatable just now. So the free degrees wasn't new. It just made it available. Excuse me, my nose is awful actually. Save this wee bit of the tash, I think. So it's basically, we've got an unfair system. Some people might argue it's unfair in the right direction. That's open for debate. But when you have a two-tier system for qualifying for university, it seems a bit odd. So you're just, if we reverted back to the old way, clever kids, regardless of where they come from, regardless of the financial position of their parents, can get into further education, and we wouldn't need the caps, because some people would be getting in, they would qualify on the same set of results, and their parents might be happy to pay, and therefore we could get more Scottish kids through universities. That would make sense to me. So anyway, this piece is in the Daily Mail, and there's like the London Economics Body, etc., and they talk about the financial position of Aberdeen University. It's all taken into account in this article, which with the headline, SNP's free degrees puts universities at risk amid funding crisis. Universities are facing a significant risk of closure amid a financial crisis fuelled by the SNP's pledge of free degrees for all Scottish students. A leading economist warned yesterday. Dr. Gavin Conlon said bringing in tuition fees could help ensure the institutions not only survive, but are able to thrive and punch their weight against some of their better funded English counterparts. Dr. Conlon, a partner with consultancy firm London Economics, told Holyrood's Education Committee the SNP policy introduced in 2008 of providing free tuition for Scots meant students are actually paid to go to university. His analysis comes after an annual report of Aberdeen University warned last month that its future was in significant doubt due to financial pressures. That is scary. Dr. Conlon spoke about the funding issues facing the sector in Scotland, noting that more than half of the institutions are in deficit and running seriously on their overdraft. That is frightening. He told MSPs probably about half of those institutions don't have any sort of reserves whatsoever to cover what is essentially their overdraft. Dr. Conlon said ministers need to give very serious concern and attention to what could happen if universities shut, adding there is a very significant risk of that. That is scary. He continued, if you want to fund institutions better so they can punch their weight, and they already punch their weight, but if you want to have them comparable to England, there has to be some form of cost passed on to graduates. That might be reducing repayment thresholds, that might be introducing fees in some way, shape or form, or a graduate endowment, whatever you want to call it. But that would certainly save a huge amount. Introducing the English system would save the Scottish Government 40% of its total cost of higher education. Dr. Conlon said universities are relatively underfunded in Scotland compared to England, Wales and Northern Ireland. He added, despite the Scottish Government putting in 5 times the amount per head of capita, its universities are the least well funded. That's frightening, isn't it, when you think we're putting in all this money, but they've still got less money than our counterparts because they charge fees. An English student contributes about 16% of the cost of higher education because the rest of it's free. Remember I said people have always had free education? And the Exchequer puts in 84%. In Scotland, students are actually paid to go to university. The level of contribution by the Scottish Government is more than 100%, as there are free fees, maintenance and loan write-offs. Scottish Tory education spokesman Liam Kerr said the SNP's underfunding of higher education means more than half our universities are in dire financial straits. Funding for students has fallen 19% in real terms since 2013, leaving Scottish universities increasingly reliant on international fees. That's what I was discussing earlier. The nationalist approach is damaging and unsustainable. The SNP ministers must ensure our cherished institutions get the financial support they need. Mary Senior of the University and College Union said higher education should be free to those able to participate in it. She told MSPs, my understanding is all political parties believe that it needs to be properly funded through the public purse. Well done, Mary. What you could eventually do is have less people available if universities started shutting, because money does not grow in trees, right? There's this socialist idea that just money's this thing that's just there, everything costs money, Mary. The Scottish Government said it is resolute in its commitment to free tuition, which basically means we're not listening. It doesn't matter what you put in front of us, we're not doing it. And this, spokesperson added, since its policy was put in place, the number of Scottish students entering universities has increased. Right. Now, this is the exact same as the free prescriptions, where we've always had free prescriptions. They just made it free to everybody as opposed to those who couldn't afford or needed them previously. But it costs us hundreds of millions, if not billions of pounds. And if they were to actually understand this and accept and agree with this, to actually then say, we're going to scrap tuition or we're going to scrap prescriptions, would be political suicide. But that doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. But you just know the consequences of you doing it would be some of the people who bought the bribe off you might not like you anymore. And you need every vote you can get. So, having a review of the tuition fees, having a review of the prescription fees is not a bad thing. It is probably what this country needs, because in those two aspects alone, we could redivert the money that it's costing the nation into or even leave it the same things, leave the money that's generated by prescriptions in the health board. That would be fantastic. Get every penny's a prisoner for them just now. And even, if we were to charge tuition fees, then just put the money back in. It's not, but it would make Scotland better, because you're creating this saving of cost that you could use better. But that won't suit the SNP, because they rely on this ethos where give them everything free and they'll probably keep voting for it. That's their business model. And for them to break that business model would be the right thing to do, but would be political suicide for them, because then they would lose the people who voted purely on those things in the first place. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please subscribe. And unless you are the SNP or their ever-decreasing cult, everyone else, have a great day. Cheery, bye now.